Today on Strange and Suspicious. A bizarre White House secret. Is there a detail protecting presidential poop from foreign adversaries?
If you're trying to scope out somebody's weaknesses, feces actually store a lot of genetic information.
And I feel like it might be safety. Like, can you see if somebody is allergic to something based off of their feces? Like, if I'm allergic to peanuts and then a foreign power now knows that I'm allergic to peanuts, that sets me up to maybe be assassinated. You have to protect the president.
Bodies recovered in Austin's Lady Bird Lake.
A dead body to shore this morning along Lady Bird Lake.
Is a serial killer on the loose?
12 bodies in 2 years.
You don't really see a lot of accidental drownings in one specific place.
The authorities are saying no foul play. That seems really weird to me.
Celebrities and normies alike embrace crystals like they're some kind of magic antidote to illness and stress.
I love what they mean, and I actually feel really calm.
But is it all BS?
There is a clear bias towards Western medicine. That is not always given to Eastern or alternative medicine like crystals.
But it feels like a placebo effect.
And I worry though, because sometimes people have really bad diseases, and instead of getting the right care, they're gonna get some crystals, and they do nothing.
So exactly how much gay pride is there in the animal and plant kingdom? Apparently, a lot.
Homosexual behavior has been reported in over 1,500 species.
Some people point to the animal kingdom as their justification for why homosexuality is an aberration, when in fact it is normal.
We are just sexual beings. We're going to want to have sex with our own gender, the other gender,
whoever's available. Opportunity.
So there is a poop conspiracy at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And I gotta tell you, this poop holds water.
It's actually a really crappy story. What it is a lot of people believe that the presidents, US presidents, right, because their health and their presentation to the world is so important that foreign adversaries might want to be interested in their health by exploring the DNA and condition of the crap.
I believe it. I buy that.
Feces actually store a lot of genetic information. They contain a microscopic amounts of blood. It contains human DNA, and it also could be an indicator for health. So if you're trying to scope out somebody's weaknesses, I think the answer is in the, the feces. To give a little bit more context surrounding this theory, on July 4th, 2006, there's a journalist and a conspiracy theorist by the name of Wayne Madsen, who took it to his blog and claimed that George Bush's feces were classified top secret. According to him, there's an entire White House division called Toilsec, and they have flown in a special portable potty for George Bush to Vienna on a trip, and it claims that it's a special, they want to make sure that they are in sole possession of his feces because it contains some top secret stuff, some sensitive information.
If you study espionage, there are a lot of different ways that data are collected, and that is a very unobtrusive, exceptional way to get biological data that could be relevant to understanding your adversary.
Putin was in France in 2019. He was seen.
Oh, we have video of this. So this is Putin coming out of the bathroom. And look at the briefcase. Some dude's walking out of the bathroom with a briefcase. And by the way, he looks guilty. And now look, all of a sudden, Putin comes out.
You guys, this gives Vladdy Putin's name a whole new meaning. Vladdy Putin.
I honestly don't believe there's a conspiracy. I believe it. Also, if I was a president and I was giving a conference in like a really terrible area, I'd want a really nice toilet flown in.
I don't think this is a conspiracy either. This seems irrefutably true. My question is, how far back does this go? Because as far as I know, DNA wasn't something that you could readily collect and analyze until maybe the 90s. So is this maybe the Clinton administration, we're gonna assume? Or
Let's think about how many people believe there is a toilet security op.
Yeah, I think it's plausible. I think it's plausible. And by the way, just on a side note, if you think you've got a job, think again. There's somebody out there who's got a worse job than you.
Yeah. So from the outset, this seems plausible, I'll admit, right? There's some strange cases of espionage. I mean, in fact, CIA tried to, do things to Fidel Castro, like put, thallium salts in his shoes to make his beard fall out and all these things. And so they'll do weird things. But I did reach out to a friend of mine who is retired Secret Service, and I asked him specifically. So he laughed and he said, well, of course, the president is a man like any other. His feces get flushed down the toilet drain like any human being. I assure you there's no toilet sex. However, the White House does have special piping, okay, to protect it from introducing anything harmful into the White House. And occasionally when they are going to foreign locations, or in the case of Donald Trump, they would bring in this, porta potty to the golf course. He said that was for convenience sake because they didn't have enough for the staff and everyone, but there is no keeping and securing of the feces.
First of all, I'd love to see your Rolodex.
He knows everybody.
No, it's like I'm calling my Secret Service friend. I went to South America. I was going to work in the Antarctica. It's like unbelievable. I believe this.
I believe it.
And I also believe you're right. I think DNA really wasn't perfected until the late 90s. So it probably is part of the Clinton administration.
Yeah, and when you talk about presidential scrutiny, I mean, that kind of ramped up, I would say, at least in the media with Clinton. So if there's any time where people are going to be looking with a microscope, it's going to be his administration.
He did acquiesce a bit, and he said, if this did happen in the past, like in the case of Stalin, right? He said, what you would get from it would be so minimal, it's not really valuable, where they could get other things through human intelligence and espionage, would be, they'd be able to find out the medical condition much better.
There's so much indirect information that can be acquired this way, I can't see them not.
Definitely health information.
And I feel like it might be safety. Like, can you see if somebody is allergic to something based off of their feces? Like, if I'm allergic to peanuts and then a foreign power knows that I'm allergic to peanuts, that sets me up to maybe be assassinated. You have to protect the president.
That's true, but also, I mean, you can check for cancer in feces. I mean, there are things where you could know a president's medical condition.
You could jam an entire presidential campaign with one detail like that.
Right. Coming up, there's something weird in Austin, Texas. 12 bodies have been found in Lady Bird Lake. And for 11 years, they dismissed it. And it's nothing. Well, they're finding these bodies.
When you're doing an autopsy, you should be able to tell whether they died from drowning or some other way. And if you're not disclosing that, why not?
If you've got all these bodies showing up, this is definitely a dumping ground of sorts. They could be a part of something bigger.
So, there's something weird in Austin, Texas.
5 bodies pulled from Lady Bird Lake in just 6 months.
A dead body to shore this morning along Lady Bird Lake.
Austin police recovered a body from Lady Bird Lake this afternoon.
Since 2022, 12 bodies have been found in Lady Bird Lake. And the authorities are saying they're accidental drownings, they're suicide, but no foul play. That seems really weird to me.
A man reported missing at the end of March was found dead in Lady Bird Lake over the weekend.
It's the second time this year a man in his 30s was found in the lake.
There are signs that there are similarities with some of the victims here. Most of them are men. There's even a theory that this was somebody who was going after gay people. It just is weird.
People, all male, all alone, gone.
Queer men, bisexual, gay men have certainly been targeted. Specifically, I think this theory is alluding to apps like Grindr, where people are targeting them. And there's even a witness statement, I think, from a bartender who mentioned, I want to go after and kill homos, is what he said.
Since last February, the city's installed more lights and cameras along the trail closer to Rainey Street.
I had also read that they were now, because all these people have been found, in this lake, that they're now putting up like maybe security fences and things like that. But I can totally imagine guy goes out to a bar, gets drunk, he's walking along, there's no security fence, falls in.
We're learning more about a body that was found in Lady Bird Lake on Monday afternoon. Just a few minutes ago, Austin police say this case is not being ruled a homicide at this time.
What I find really troubling with Austin PD is ultimately what they come out as the disposition for these bodies. Some of them are just undetermined, but it's not a homicide. Well, if it's undetermined, how can you say it's not a homicide? In addition to which, when you're doing an autopsy, you should be able to tell whether they died from drowning or some other way. And if you're not disclosing that, why not?
It's also a tourist destination and one of their big draws for the state. I mean, you got all these nightclubs. Do you really want it out there that there's a possible serial killer? Because it could create a frenzy or hysteria. On the other side, you got some cops that would love nothing more than to be working on a serial killing investigation. So it's a push-pull.
One of their reasons was that there's no through pattern, like with all of them. And they're saying, well, in both serial killers, they identified Ted Bundy, it's got to be a woman with dark hair and all this stuff.
Everything is accidental, undetermined, like not being like it's just too many, oh, well, it just so happened.
Well, Ashley, you're a mathematician. 12 bodies in 2 years.
I need so many more numbers than that. I mean, given the population, it's not completely unheard of, especially if there's bars nearby and a body of water. Even when I'm sober, swimming is pretty rough.
There are bodies of water near almost every metropolitan area, but you really, to your point, you don't really see numbers this close together with a lot of accidental drownings in one specific place. So there's either something geographically wrong with the area that makes it dangerous, or there's something else going on here that we don't know.
You know what it reminds me of a little bit? Is that you look at the Gilgo Beach serial killer.
Rex, did you do it?
For 11 years, they dismissed it. And it's nothing. Well, they're finding these bodies. And at a point, not all of it's accidental, not all of it's disconnected.
You do have a party place next to dangerous place. Like when I went to college, I went to UC Santa Barbara, and Isla Vista is on the cliffs, right, and the beach is right below. Every year, somebody falls off the cliff. Sometimes they die, sometimes they don't.
I was at that school for 4 years, and nobody did that.
I do also think there's a problem with the police department. In 2008, Riyad Hamad was found on the bottom of the river, duct taped, hands bound, feet bound, duct tape on his eyes, and they said it was accidental. It was a suicide.
That's crazy.
They said it was a suicide.
But I think in every serial killer investigation, doesn't it always start out with law enforcement pretty much not going out and saying, hey, it's a serial killer? It takes time for them to really come to that, because it's such a rare occurrence.
But this isn't rare.
There's no transparency between what the investigation that the police are doing and the public that want answers. And that's why everybody's questioning it.
This is definitely a dumping ground of sorts. If you've got all these bodies showing up in a mass of water, maybe several of these bodies that do have consistent through lines to them, to their kills or accidental drownings, they could be a part of something bigger.
Maybe a serial killer knows that this is a place that people tend to fall in, so he's like, let me just use this as the dumping ground, because then the law enforcement's not going to think it's a serial killer.
They want to accomplish what's in their fantasy, and they need to get away with it. That's what they're thinking about.
Serial killers are not normal people, right? So what drives them to do that? There's something specific in that killing that gives them pleasure and excitement or gets them off, and so that's where the MO comes in, that they will have it's like a ritual for them.
What if a serial killer says, you know what, that's what they think they're looking for, so I'll just do it differently each time, but I'll keep doing it, and I'll outsmart the cops?
It's possible, but a lot of them have real specific things that either turn them on or that are their ideal fantasy that they're trying to do. But it is
the fantasy
possible.
Might be escaping the police.
And the other fantasy might be, I want to try this, I want to try this, I want to try that. Like they're experimenting with different things. It's possible.
Coming up, I know a lot of people believe that crystals are this magical kind of thing that heals and calms and whatever. Convince me.
I think that there could be a thing to crystals. The reason you put it on is because you want to have positive vibes, positive energy.
You got a lot of these practitioners who I think are onto something, but they're then just selling it, and capitalizing off of it.
If it makes you feel better mentally, go for it, but it should never replace modern medicine.
I know a lot of people believe that crystals are this magical kind of thing that heals and calms and whatever. Convince me.
First of all, we're in Los Angeles, so we know that crystals have kind of become somewhat woo-woo. They've been co-opted. However, I give credence to the idea that there is a clear bias towards Western medicine, right? We can fund clinical trials to prove its efficacy. It's not to say that it's true, it's just maybe untested.
Yeah, and that leaves a gap because you got a lot of these practitioners who I think are onto something, but they're then just selling it, and capitalizing off of it and guessing or completely making it up.
I think that there could be a thing to crystals. Like you could have a crystal around your wrist on a bracelet. And it just reminds you the reason you put it on is because you want to have positive vibes, positive energy.
But it feels like the power of suggestion more than it is a placebo effect.
But I mean, there are other things besides crystals. I mean, you look at silver, you look at copper, people put it on their joints.
A place.
Yeah, but they, you know, because there's a magnetic component to it that somehow helps with circulation. And I do think in some instances that placebo effect, that, you know, it's psychosomatic. You think, okay, this is working.
Which can be effective.
And I worry though, because sometimes people have really bad diseases, and instead of getting the right care, they're going to get some crystals, and they do nothing.
That's a really important point.
I also believe that the crystals that are in place, and especially with the colors, I think they kind of play on color theory a little bit. Red is a very strong color in color theory. When we talk about the clear quartz, which is the master healer, like it being clear, transparent, white things being linked to purity.
So ultimately, there's no scientific evidence that energy is transferred between crystals and people. Matter and energy, like E equals MC squared, are interchangeable, meaning that me touching this should be able to affect me. This piece of paper should be able to affect me. We assign this to crystals because they're pretty. If we found out that centipedes could cure our diseases, would you want to keep that in your pocket?
So you know the thing with Kim Kardashian where she got robbed in Paris and they put her in the bathtub and duct taped her and the whole thing?
Yeah.
Sure.
E.T. talked to her about how she healed.
After my whole Paris situation over a year ago, all my friends would come over and bring me healing crystals. I love what they mean, and I actually feel really calm.
Do you feel healed? Do you feel better?
I do.
We need to figure out where she's been investing.
There was something very, very strong that she said. I love how they look aesthetically.
It's less about the physical object, it is about the sentiment. Somebody came and gifted her this and said, I know you went through something, have this as a token of me hoping you heal. That can be enough.
But you know the whole concept of mind over matter.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking the crystals are kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
We have to define what a crystal is.
Yeah.
It's a material with an aligned pattern. So that could be anything like a snowflake is a crystal.
Salt,
amethyst is a
right?
crystal. Yeah, and so is salt. So if amethyst has healing power, then you might as well just dump a bunch of salt onto your chest and say that it's going to heal
call
my
it a day.
stomach cancer. It's essentially the same. It's the same thing.
Can it amplify it? Because crystals,
No,
think about crystal radios, right? They use them because electromagnetic energy resonates through the crystal, and so it amplifies.
There's a reaction that's being triggered
and
here.
they have memory, like water crystals.
That's a reaction being triggered.
Here's my opinion. If it makes you feel better mentally, go for it. But it should
Placebo.
never replace modern medicine or Western medicine.
It's not the same as, like, you know, taking an orange and putting it on your body and saying
It
the
is
orange
the
will heal
same.
me.
It is the
It's
same
literally
thing.
the same thing.
It is literally the same thing. It is the same thing.
Coming up.
There is homosexual behavior that's been reported in over 1,500 species, including insects, fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals.
There are certain species that seem to be more prone than others, like, for example, gay penguins.
You have to realize they are in jail. They're in a zoo.
Are you saying this is prison gay?
This is surprising and unsurprising to me at the same time, that there are members of the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom, that's the surprising part for me, that are gay.
There is homosexual behavior that's been reported in over 1,500 species, including insects, fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals. I don't even think there's like a label to put to it. How much evidence do we need over time that we are just sexual beings? We're not in one category or the other, and so we're going to want to have sex with our own gender.
Whoever's available.
Yeah, opportunity.
It's interesting, and because there are certain animals, certain species that seem to be more prone than others, like, for example, dolphins.
Flamingos.
And some people point to the animal kingdom as their justification for why homosexuality is an aberration, when in fact, if you look at the animal kingdom, it is not. It is normal.
I mean, we got to look at the life forms. When you look at animals that are hermaphrodites, okay, those are lower life forms like snails. They can go either way for reproduction, and that's clearly biologically in order for that species to survive. But if you look at higher life forms, like primates, like the bonobos, okay, When you look at them, they are animals that are sophisticated enough to engage in sex for pure recreation and not procreation.
But there are relationships, right? There's talk of flamingos when eggs are left behind. Homosexual flamingos will adopt these eggs that are left behind, and they will raise these children as their own.
Birds, unlike mammals, the male bird and the female bird are equally vested in the child rearing. And so when you look at penguins who are sitting on eggs, it's the male penguin that sits on the egg till the chick hatches.
I'm glad you mentioned penguins because there's this really cool documentary called Queer Planet by Peacock, and they profile 2 gay penguins.
They are also very gay.
They formed a bond with each other about a couple of years ago, and through that we started showing signs increasingly that their bond was becoming stronger, and ultimately they built a territory together, then subsequently built a nest together.
Are there any other females in that little habitat?
And also you have to realize they are in jail. They're in a zoo.
Are you saying this is prison gay?
Even outside of the context of the zoo, like penguins have been, most reported on homosexual relationships within the animal kingdom. So the fact that this is happening here, I don't think that it's by coincidence.
The thing is, like, if you see 2 dolphins holding fins, it's like maybe it's just a companionship. We don't want to read maybe further into it.
Also, to be fair, people like to distinguish humans from, we're also mammals. We are animals. We're part of that same kingdom. I don't think it's too far off the cuff to assume that it is more of like a feeling relationship as opposed to just, oh, they like sex together.
There's lots of different reasons why animals. If you look at bonobos, like the way female bonobos play with each other, a lot of the time it's to resolve conflict, which is incredibly queer-coded. Incredibly. That is very gay-coded.
The part that I find surprising, it's not the animal part, I get that. It's the plant part, the fungi, and I don't understand that.
That's because he's a fun guy.